So today we're actually going to be discussing the energy of the outer planets and how to work with that energy. We're also going to touch on topics of repressed emotions and also the law of attraction. And I'm actually currently going through Uranus transit myself. And this is typically thought of as the midlife crisis transit, which actually puts you on a new path.
You should be on a distinctly different path. You could be on a distinctly different path, and you clearly are. So there's some part of the ego which is always going to seek to go back to the way things were.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you to just remain conscious of that and just notice, okay, there it is. And then go back to your heart and connect to the divine, whatever it is that guides you, and say, okay, what is the step today that I can take? And it seems very relevant to how to work with like the energy of the outer planets, is to really kind of each day, each moment, just look at whatever the step in front of you is. But the other thing I've kind of intuited is that, and ultimately the way I understand it, which is very relevant to working with, it's perhaps the medicine to working with the energy of all three of the outer planets, is to live more fully in the moment and to let go of the not only the future, but the past. So to grieve and to feel all of your emotions and to stay fully present with that experience when it's there. And then when it's done, let it go, which means letting go of any thoughts of that person shouldn't have done that, or if this thing had just happened differently, then my life wouldn't be all screwed up. It's like, no, your life is the way it's meant to be. And, it's when your life is over and you're on the other side, you'll be able to look back and be like, everything unfolded perfectly. And so in order to really live from that place, to trust that your mind is inadequate in taking all the information in and really processing it with the level of depth and breadth that would be required in order to kind of figure it out, so to speak. Mm. And so instead, to let the mind do what it does best, which is not to figure these types of things out. That's much more the domain of what you could say is the heart, the body, right? The intuition, right? Which is just in the moment. And so perhaps that moment will come when you need to plan a particular element of your life. Mm. And when that's appropriate, then I would encourage one to do so. But trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen so you can kind of prepare and avoid some unpleasant circumstance. I've never experienced that working in my life. I don't know of anybody who's succeeded in that. And even if I did, it's the percentages are low. Mm-hmm. It's not an efficient use of your time and energy. And what I found, and this is after years of work, of doing this type of stuff and kind of going through some pretty challenging processes in my own life. My hope is that I can teach people to live in harmony with life and, God, whatever you want to call it, more quickly than I did, with less trial and error. I mean, I think a lot of this like law of attraction, The Secret, and teachings of Abraham have really kind of polluted the minds of so many spiritual seekers, going on a long tangent about that. And it's not that it's completely untrue from the perspective of the 12th dimension. It's completely true, but we live in the third dimension. Mm-hmm. And things unfold very slowly here. What would appear to be very slowly from the 12th dimension is in the same moment. 20 years is a second from that higher dimensional perspective, as I understand it. And even if it's all true, it's still reinforcing the whole like egoic mentality of.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I remember my friend wanted to watch The Secret when it first came out. Like it was like there was an Oprah special and people.
Oh my God, it's mind blowing.
And it was so ridiculous. I remember like there was this one part where they talked about how you have to like envision yourself. But of course, the thing you were envisioning yourself is driving that new sports car you've been dreaming of. And I was like, this is so.
So what I would say, my stance on this is that there's a lot of truth in it. It's not that it's untrue. I mean, you can manifest anything. It might take you 20 years. Right. And you may go through these bouts of really deep unhappiness, because what ends up happening is when we don't get what we want, we get frustrated and depressed and angry and, whatever. And then you get what you want and you're happy for a day, a week, a month, and then you're back to wanting something else. And what it's done is it's reinforced this perpetual cycle of wanting, which never ends. And you can also look back on your own life. I mean, most people, there's certainly some exceptions of people who've had more unfortunate lives, but probably most, if not all, the people who are going to be watching these videos and the people that we're going to interact with have gotten what they've wanted at some point in their life. Particularly the big things, a relationship, success in some sort of important
a vacation,
endeavor,
a car, yeah,
a material item, whatever, right? You have gotten what you've wanted.
Maybe not everything, but some of the things you wanted.
But certain things, and like some big things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Important things like a relationship,
a baby,
a baby, a job, career type thing, a home. So there's a handful of things that are very common that are perhaps like a spiritual desire that your soul incarnates to experience these things, particularly around relationships that we've gotten. And so we get them and then we're not happy. So it's like, what is the point of wanting, of getting what you want if you're not going to be happy when you get it? Now, if this was truly what your mind had, what your ego has fooled you into believing, if that actually was accurate, that your life would be better, then your life would be better. You would be happier. You could look back through the course of your life and say, okay, after I got that thing, I was permanently happier. But that's not the case. Most people are no happier now than they were at various points in their past before they had gotten these important things. These are not happy people. They've worked their asses off to get this thing that they want. They get it, and nothing changes in their baseline psychological.
You just have
state.
A huge McMansion to clean,
right? So this is why, like, a gratitude practice, a very basic personal development practice, can be so effective, but almost nobody does it. Why? I've developed a practice based on a different philosophy. So what I have to say to follow this up is that this whole law of attractions narrative, which so many people bought into, they bought into because it's still ego.
Mm.
Spiritual ego is still ego. It's no more mature, or maybe slightly more
It's
mature.
almost like you're saying, if you reach this pinnacle, you'll get this stuff.
It's like I can live with a spiritual orientation to life and still pursue, live a life based on the pursuit of getting everything that I want, and have that be my primary focus in life is I want what I want, and I'm going to do what I have to do to get it. And what's interesting is law of attraction has perpetuated this idea that I can do this through psychological and energetic processes, that I don't even have to work for anything, or that, my work would be like a meditation or something like that. And I don't deny that it could work. It seems that it does work for a fraction of people who really have taken this serious, this whole like law of attraction lifestyle. But those people still don't, some of them still don't strike me as happy. You know what I mean? They still have drama. You know what I mean? So this law of attraction narrative also then says that you have to be in the vibration of how you would be if you had that thing, right? The relationship, the car, the whatever it is, right? So you think about getting it, and then you feel those good feelings. And then if you can maintain that emotional state, then you will attract that which will perpetuate it. But the question that I asked myself, which was life-changing, that I invite other people to ask themselves, if you had that, how would you feel? How would you be? Right? Just imagine that. Have those good feelings. Then ask yourself, do you really need to get it in order to feel that way? Because right now you're thinking about it and you're feeling that way. So you've just answered that question. No, you don't need to get it. You can feel that way just by thinking about getting it. Now, if you had the choice of feeling that way right now all the time and not having this thing and not having to go through whatever it would take to get it, or doing law of attraction stuff and hopefully manifesting it somewhere down the road, and, you know, doing your best to kind of deal with the repressed emotion, because that's ultimately what happens with this, is people repress the emotion of frustration and grief of whatever, of not having the object of their desire. That's been my experience. There's a lot of repressed emotion that is the fallout of buying in wholeheartedly to this narrative. And I'm sure there are some exceptions to this, but that's just been my experience with people I've met, is that they just act like everything's great. And like anybody who's got the slightest bit of empathy can just see right through it, be like, dude, you're so full of shit. Like, I don't buy that at all. You know, instead of just being authentic.
It's almost like you're selling something. You're a salesman.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to convince yourself that things are different than they are, when there's just so much more going on under the surface. So what I'm suggesting instead is that God, or your spirit guides, or your higher self, whatever you want to call that, is exponentially, many orders of magnitude more intelligent and more mature, more wise than your human egoic mind, right? So when you get your human ego mind involved in this, you're attempting to cut that, divine mind out of the picture and say, no, I want this, right? I'm going to go get that thing, or that experience, or that relationship, whatever it may be. Instead of saying, okay, God's way fucking smarter than I am, so I'm just going to surrender and let go of everything that my ego has brought forward, knowing that it's probably bullshit to begin with, and going through some intellectual, doing some work around like, well, what really is coming from my soul, right? Because there are desires of the soul. I'm not trying to negate that. What I am trying to negate is that your mind is an effective tool in figuring out how to get that, whether it be through law of attraction or something else. And so, this very much dovetails into what we were talking about, is you acknowledge that which you desire, which is of the soul, a relationship, fulfilling some sort of a higher purpose, things like that. Perhaps, ending up in a particular location, or, in some home. I mean, it could be anything. It's probably going to have to do either with relationship or learning.
I'm just thinking, like, I remember one time I was somewhere with somebody and they were like, I could just envision myself on that house on the water.
And there may be something like some sort of spiritual purpose to being in a particular like location,
right. That's true.
By the ocean or a mountain, or, whatever it may be.
And that's natural to want to live in a beautiful place. There's something.
And I'm not denying that. But what I'm saying is, getting too specific is now you've taken your mind and you've taken God out of the picture. Now, perhaps you can go into a meditative state, do something more akin to a shamanic journey, and allow an image to arise. That's different. But even if that does happen, you notice the image and you let it go, and you make your only intention to live in harmony with all of life, with God, to move gracefully through with the current of life, instead of moving forcefully through the power of your will. And it's so much more efficient, and life just unfolds magically in a way that you could have never imagined. And it's much more magical, and it's like full of twists and turns. And it's like, oh, I would have never imagined things unfolding this way. And this is incredible.
Right.
But it's also incredibly challenging, and this path is going to trigger all of your wounds. You're going to have to feel the entire spectrum of emotion. And some of them are going to be horrible, and some of them are going to be incredible, really wonderful. To the extent that you're willing to experience everything is the experience that you can experience all the emotional states that you desire. You're going to have to experience grief and anger and fear and all of it, right? And if you're willing to show up and experience whatever life brings you, you're going to get that whole experience. And then at the end of your journey, you're going to look back and you're going to say, I'm glad I experienced all that. And the way it unfolded was so much cooler than anything I could have ever thought of.